spoken at a few conferences over the years, and I've started by saying something that is pretty simple. It involves a prop. Welcome to the American Energy Revolution. We moved our manufacturing from Shenzhen, China in 2010 to Boyertown, Pennsylvania. And since then have installations on over 30 US Navy ships, Morgan Stanley's corporate headquarters in Times Square, and countless small businesses around the United States. I'm here today not so much to talk about what we've done, but to talk about this business case for LED lighting. We're going to cover a few things in the next 30 to 35 minutes, and it starts with really the opportunity and why now versus all of the friction in the marketplace for adoption of disruptive technology. And I'll just dig right in and tell you that you may know some of these statistics as fellow energy professionals, but 40% of the US energy is used for buildings. 20% or more, even sometimes 30 or 40%, is typically the piece of commercial electricity that goes towards lighting. And we can now, because of the cost reductions for the technology, bring ROI inside of the 33, even the 50% range of ROI inside of a 3 and even a 2-year payback. And now the longer life illumination can also reduce the maintenance labor. When it comes to why now, we've seen an incredible transformation in the last 10 years. So when we look at something as simple as color, well, there wasn't the consistency and there weren't the warm color tones like this ceiling overhead that is in typically the 3,500 to 4,000 Kelvin range, the kind of domestic lighting for residential that involves, even the 2,700. And it wasn't that we couldn't do it, we couldn't do it with the output efficiency because of the layers of the phosphor and the consistency of the color. With the efficacy now, in terms of this efficiency in lumens per watt, when we're talking about 100 to over 125, moving into the 150 and 60 range, it's really game-changing shifts. It's not 80 or 90, which was comparable to some of the better T5 fluorescent. So we had that challenge early in the, say, the 2010 and 2012, where it was better but not better enough. And with longevity, as many of you may know with illumination, the T5s can go from what were the older 10,000, 15,000 hour life into the 30 and 40,000. So 50 was good, but it wasn't a big enough delta of change. Now we're over 100,000. With the output and beam angle, having the options and the adjustment to meet the needs of the facility managers was key. And then with the smart controls, daylight harvesting, the demand response, all the dimming and the occupancy sensors have really started to come onto the market. And honestly, with the warranties, it was great when there was a 1 or 3 year warranty. For some of the initial products, we were the first in 2010 to put the 5-year warranty on the map and really back it up without all the fine print of restrictions. And then in 2013, we went to the 10-year. We just haven't seen, based on the reliability of this technology, the failure levels that some of the fluorescent enthusiasts had honestly hoped for. Okay, with significant decreases in cost, the LED payback under the 3 years was interesting as a target for many of our customers across the industry. Although a 20% ROI, is better than the stock market, it's still a 5-year wait. So we started to see that the 2.5 to 3 year window was really the sweet spot for us to have a yes come across from the other side of the table. And that's where the ROI of the 33 sort of minimum comes from. And then with the rebates, we've met with so many groups over the years, including in New York City with Con Edison. They had Lockheed Martin as the administrator. Back in 2010 and 11, we had to, before even Design Lights Consortium existed, it's sort of now the gatekeeper for the standards, convince them the technology was worthy of a rebate because the T12 conversion, old fluorescent to the T8 and the 5s were getting some money. And we said, what about us? 40 or 45 watts as a 4-foot linear module, down to 32 watts is fine. Down to 28 watts is fine, but we were at 15 then. Now we're at 12. So we wanted our piece of that action as an incentive for what I started calling the leapfrog. We wanted the buyer not to spend the time on the labor to put something that was halfway towards a really good energy solution. As we go through this, this is the tipping point. So whether it's the McKinsey study, like the one I have photographed, illustrated here, is about when and how it makes sense. So we know from the homes that the Home Depots and the Lowe's of the world have $2 and $3 socket bulbs that used to be $12 and $15. They can cut an incandescent 60 watts down to under 10. Great. With the fluorescent, it's a little harder slog, and there are 2.3 billion fluorescent tubes in American ceilings, because honestly, the 32 watts is a lot better than having a few incandescent bulbs. So it was like trying to improve on something that had already made some inroads. And that's why the curve is shallower versus the incandescent, which is the green line coming down, for both the CFL and the linear module for fluorescent replacement. Here's what is an eye-opener for many people outside of the lighting industry. I call this the wake-up call from the Best Buy syndrome. I hope that none of you here spent $5,000 on a flat-screen TV to learn the next summer that they were $2,000 and then $1,000, and now I think they're $499, right? So the concern from the operating officers, the facility managers, was they would get an email months from purchase to learn that they overpaid, and the tech had gotten better. And so what I tell people now, and it's a pretty simple concept, is the curves have slowed. So we have cut the cost in half in the last 10 years, and we have doubled the output in lumens per watt. We will continue to improve. We will make excellent inroads in efficiency. They will just not be as great year over year as where we've come. We will also cut the cost incrementally, but it will not be as draconian as what has happened really in the last 3 years versus even the last 10. So what I can tell them is the cost of waiting is steep, because that cost will come down for the product, but it will not come down at the same level as the savings you will earn by not wasting fuel. Okay, sample scenario. We need to do this in the marketplace. It's show and tell. On a $1 million that you could invest, well, to save $6 million over 10 years is a pretty good story when you're talking about over $500,000 every single year. And the question becomes, when we bring new people into our organization all the time, why don't more people say yes? And it's amazing when you look at these kind of statistics based on the number of the tubes. In this case, it's 30,000, 3,000, or 30,100, to 31,250. Well, it's a big number and it's a big decision because there's an incumbent. Some facility manager in New York gets the Ranger tickets from the Replica lighting company. They've used the lights for so many years, they haven't had that many problems, and they've gotten used to changing them. So while the math tells a good story, it's really frustrating that there's friction in the system. One of the ways that we can challenge that friction is just show and tell. Getting some samples in, starting to incrementally make changes, showing the engineering. In this case, there's a deep fin aluminum heatsink, like the linear module that I held, that manages that temperature. It ensures the longevity, it ensures the consistency of the color and the efficacy. There's other options where you raise the printed circuit board inside these cylinders to start to dissipate the heat and have more omnidirectional lighting. There are replaceable driver systems. So lots of choices exist to replace fluorescent tubes, as well as what we'll talk about, which are the other fixtures. When it comes to the socket bulbs, whether it's a standard, an A19 base, we can see filament style LEDs now mimic what were the old original sort of Edison style. So at first they were too bright, they were too blue, white. You've seen the Christmas tree lights where people say, oh my gosh, I want that creamy yellow color, or it doesn't look like what I'm used to. Fine. We have now as an industry started to make things look like what was done 100 years ago, but using 10 cents on the dollar of energy. Cavity back, BR30s, the G24 bases. There are so many types of lighting. The industry has really exploded where we don't know of too many applications where the LEDs aren't a good match from a visual, a functional, and honestly a mathematical level from a finance perspective. When it comes to the classic fluorescent 4-foot tube, going from 32 to 12 is an incredible story. And when you have 5x on the longevity, we start to make a lot of friends. I will just tell you anecdotally, we have 24 skyscrapers in Manhattan where we're changing out these fluorescent tubes. It's one of the largest retrofits in US history, and it feels pretty good now after a decade of being in the trenches that people are starting to see the value. In New York, the high cost of electricity, in addition to long runtime areas like the exit stairs, the common areas, is the starting point. It doesn't hurt to also have a big old boost from an organization like Con Edison that does not want to build $1 billion power plant to meet the demand that they cannot meet. And this is the demand challenge for peak load in August 23rd at 3 p.m. until 7 at night. Trust me, they're biting their nails wondering when they're going to have to shut some people down. When it comes to other types of lights, we have expanded, as many of the other players at the manufacturing level have, to include troughers. It's not just changing the tubes, and the wake-up call came when a developer said, Charlie, love what you've done. We have a new construction project. Why should we put tubes in troughers that were designed for fluorescent, mercury-based illumination? We said, great call. We will use strips. We will design systems that will have this stylistic look of what you may want, volumetric, code, whatever it happens to be, and do the same with stair fixtures, for vapor tights, and even for high bays. So we will take the lessons learned in thermal management from the linear modules and extend them. I talk to our team when we do the LED boot camps and the training. It's like having Legos. If you do something well at a modular level, it can scale. And you can turn a Lego into just about anything, from a bridge and a castle into, I think, a rocket ship to launch in your imagination. So we love this space because when you crack the code about heat and you can get that sustained quality of color, efficacy, and longevity, it can scale in many, many ways. Okay, solar is interesting, so I'm going to start talking about some key considerations that may be new for some of you. When you produce, as I do on my home outside of Philadelphia, electricity using photovoltaic solar panels, you are producing direct current, and the inverter is turning it into alternating current. The lamp I held up, that is an LED, is powered from DC. We have to convert with a driver alternating current into direct current. We now have technology to go directly from the solar into the LEDs. So if you can imagine an efficiency of an additional 12.5 to 20% energy savings, now that warehouse can have some solar on the roof, and the ROI for the solar will go up because together, the sibling of green power production with green energy reduction becomes a very elegant scenario. We did one of the first net zero operation for illumination buildings in the United States back in 2011. It was the Davis and Warshaw Distribution Center for Ferguson in Maspeth, Queens, 250,000 square foot. They had solar already on the roof that was covering half of the cost of illumination. These were the old T12 fluorescent tubes. We changed the lights, and now the electricity generator on the roof powers their entire illumination system. Efficiencies in how we treat, again, green power production with the green power reduction is an interesting and exciting opportunity for us, where it's not a one-trick pony that only lives in a vacuum. When it comes to other considerations like optics, we have found that all lumens are not created equal. So if you have a light, could be a metal halide, right, high intensity discharge up in a ceiling 30 feet off the ground, you are going to be sending light in multiple directions. Some of it is wasted going up, but a good portion of it is wasted going out. So what we have now with the new generation of optics is the ability to create narrow fields. This is the beam angle that is really, really appropriate as the industry moves from 12-foot aisle widths in warehousing environments to 8 feet and now even down to 6 feet. So the point here is you could have a metal halide fixture that would be producing over 40,000 total lumens, and an LED at 24,000 might solve the problem. But another LED fixture at even 18,000, if it's pushing that set of photons to the floor and where it's needed to yield the foot candles required by that facility, we're off to the races. We did a terrific project for Anheuser-Busch for Gretz Beer. It's the size of Lincoln Financial Field out in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. It has everything from the reflectors and the occupancy sensors to meet the needs of the owners and operators. And it was about pushing the capacity of LEDs to the next level. Okay, cross sections of the detail of how, from the photometric standpoint, we're seeing the light move at a horizontal level is important as we analyze the matchmaking challenge of any given assignment. And then when it comes to the photometrics, an ask of 30-foot candles at floor is unusually high for a warehouse, but an ask for 30-foot candles on the racks so that the drivers of the forklift trucks can see the UPC code clearly is incredibly rare. This was an extreme push to see how we could leverage this new LED technology. And we were able to model it and use the reflectors to reach their goals and create business efficiency where imagine instead of just saving money on kilowatt hours reduced, they're not going back to take a pallet of Bud Light to the truck where 10 tractor trailers roll in all day, every day on 3 shifts into this facility. So if we can create a story that is not just about saving energy, but creating more business, and I think from a dialogue standpoint, expand to COOs and CFOs and CEOs, not facility managers and directors, we open an interesting conversation with the other energy professionals that are also looking to optimize systems. And that's where lighting can start to become part of a system, not just an afterthought of maintenance and the ease of changing fewer light bulbs. Okay, purchase evaluation metrics. You are all probably familiar with something like miles per gallon for a car, which is the analogy for lumens per watt. Well, we want to go beyond the lumens per watt because we want to look at what those output levels cost. So lumens per dollar is a way to compare 2 fixtures that might have the same output, but divide the output of light by the cost. Okay, now you have a number. What's really interesting is if you look at lumens per dollar over the warranty life. And I can tell you, because we have the 10-year warranty, we selfishly created this metric. I am unabashedly telling you that no one is using this metric because they are all in that 5-year warranty range. When you start to have an extended life and the owner does not have to think twice about changing the light, you can make an argument mathematically that you are getting more of something for the dollar. When I talked about optics, we can talk about foot candles per dollar. So now, just having more light per dollar or more light per dollar over the warranty is not even as good as having the most useful light at floor and vertical systems, like racks in a warehouse, per dollar. All of this compounds to total cost of ownership, which is let's look at what you are spending, not just for the energy to maintain the fixture versus a traditional fluorescent, halide, whatever it happens to be. But let's look at the cost to buy the equipment and then the operating cost over time. And let's assess the value of replacement labor that may also include in 5 years changing a fixture versus the longer warranty. So many of these are looking at system life cycle cost versus commodity pricing. Okay, incentives like the rebates and tax deductions. The utility rebate eligibility is interesting because there was no governing body. The utility companies were tired of Charlie Cerati and his team at Lockheed Martin coming in and explaining why our next new fixture deserved a rebate over and above what the difference was with a high-performance fluorescent. So the utility companies teamed up, they created the Design Lights Consortium and set some rules. Minimum at the 5-year warranty level, certain lumens per watt, certain lumen output by fixture type. Great. We helped drive some of that by setting the first 5-year standard, and now there are 70,000 products listed on DLC. You pay per product, per subset, and it's an incredible burden on manufacturing. I'm not going to rant today about why it could and how it could be improved, but the point is there is a governing entity which helps our industry, because when there is like a UL certification or listing and a DLC, then someone has had to do some work to submit it to meet some criteria. Happy to have that. When it comes to EPACT and the new congressional approval, you now have with the Energy Policy Act an additional incentive that will help move the needle for adoption. You may know of it through climate systems and all the other factors where you can get up to $1.80 per square foot, of which 60 cents is earmarked for lighting. Well, 600 grand on a 1 million square foot warehouse or part of a corporate campus is a big number. In a tax bracket in the mid 30s, you know, basically that's 200 grand. So think of the EPACT as taking 20% off of the cost of an initial investment in LEDs. That helps significantly reduce the payback time to within sometimes even a single year. Okay. We touched a little bit on the 5-year versus the 10-year warranty, and what I want to talk about is fine print, because I could not stand going to one of the big box stores and seeing a fluorescent replacement that had a 5-year warranty in bold letters and an asterisk, and the asterisk was a limiter for 3 hours per day. I'm not going to tell you which one of the gigantic global lighting companies this was, but it was so bad that they would actually create a product and not put enough either risk in their time and engineering and commitment to go to something like even an 8 or 10 hour shift. Because other than a laundry room at home or a residential parking garage, I don't know where you only use 3 hours a day in any type of building environment. So what we found is you have to be careful, and one push that we have with DLC now is to start qualifying in some way what the warranty is, because just saying 5 years is not enough. The other buyer beware message here is about failure. What defines failure? When do you get another product? When does the RMA come through with the return material authorization? Well, it's surprisingly high, where you're going to see sometimes 10, 15, 20% of the diodes could go out and it's still not failed. We picked 5 because so few of our technology, case histories have had any failure at all. What you also are going to see is protections against color shift. So there's very little language in a lot of warranties about what it means to have a quality product sustained over time. So we also have led the industry by identifying the limits to small percentages of color shift, because if you bought something and inside of the warranty period it looks different from what you had initially purchased, I think you are fair to raise your hand and ask for something else. And then the other one with the degradation is the L70 standard is simply that we expect depth of an LED to still have 70% of its original outputs, not dark. So having standards to meet inside of warranty output levels is also a criteria we felt was worthy of language to protect the buyers and honestly the strategic partners that might have a mutual benefit, where we're buying and recommending to our clients systems that we don't necessarily manufacture in the energy space, so we could be strategically aligned with other energy providers, and other energy providers are incorporating some of our systems into their solutions. So this is a win-win, only if someone can count on the product to do what we said it was going to do in the beginning. Okay, financing. Imagine a rhythm of a meeting. We get on board, the facility person is taking us upstream to the COO, the CFO, where we met the CFO and they've gotten approval by the facility team, and they look at the $1 million opportunity of an investment to save $500,000 a year, and they say, Charlie, we didn't budget for the 7-figure upgrade. We get it, we like the samples you put in, we like the reporting you provided, the incentives, and we came back, and this was about 3 years ago, and said, how about you don't give us any money? How about we do a savings share equivalent with either an equipment lease, on-balance sheet solutions, off-balance sheet solutions, a whole suite of opportunities where, in the case of saving $500,000 a year, it's about 40 grand in a month, and the payment could be $20,000. So you will be net positive, real cash in your pocket, and we extend that life for 4 or 5 years typically, and you're going to own the system. There are rental subsets of this as well for tenants, where when we had tenant relationships, they would say, Charlie, love it. I not only don't want to buy it, I don't want to finance it because I don't need to own this stuff. I got 7 years left on a 10-year lease or 3 on a 5, and we said, okay, how about you borrow it? Literally, we're going to own it, we're going to go collect the rebate, we're going to make the math work where you're going to be paying less every month, and you're going to have an option to continue extending those savings if you choose to renew your lease, and if not, it's transferable to next tenants or owner, and at worst case, we take it back because it's like a used German car. We can run it through a test point, and someone was very smart to change the word used to pre-owned, right? Well, imagine in an office, if we've got 100,000 hour life on this technology, and they're using at 12 hours in a day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., say it's 60 hours in a week, right? 12 times 5, about 3,000 hours in a year. Well, they might have only used, over 3 years, 10% of the potential of this technology. What we also set up, just so you know, to take some of these things back, is a 501c3, the First Light project. So we've done multiple installations in the Gambia and parts of the developing world, as well as some in the US, where healthcare clinics and schools need light. So in many parts of the world, it's not about cost, it's about capacity. They don't have a generator capable of turning all the lights on in any given room, and we give away what are the prior generation technology to the people that absolutely need it most. We have a tax deduction advantage there, and it is a way also to contribute as we're building this momentum, and I feel pretty good that there is a gigantic global demand for better cost-effective illumination, and there's no end in sight potentially for places to put what a tenant may not want 3 years after eking the value out of at least 10% of it. Okay, best practices. So we're going to go through a couple points here, which is assessing the total cost of ownership is not always as easy and clear as people might think. There are professional expert solutions providers on our team that go way beyond the engineering of just the products to look at modeling different choices, and in many cases we have solutions that are a line of exterior lights that we don't manufacture. We have sourced, vetted, found the TCO that makes the most sense for those accounts. We just did the largest Burger King chain in New Jersey, all exterior parking poles, not product that we manufacture, but strategic manufacturing relationships. And we match those against all kinds of choices before we made the recommendation to our client. With the considerations, ROI and delamping, sensors and warranties. It's not about cost and just lumens. It's the other variables that go into choice. Okay, TCO is pretty simple to calculate, right? Front-end cost of the equipment and then the ongoing expense. And what is amazing is to show customers simple charts like this. This is not complicated with layers and layers of spreadsheets. This is get rid of every T12 you possibly have, because that tube, I mean, $1,500 in a troffer, 3 or 4 of them, is ridiculous. That no one thinks about lighting because it's not typically sub-metered from climate control and computers and all the other electrical needs in their building. So this is an exciting way to say that thing over your head that has either a 3 or 4 unit, right, fluorescent unit housing is costing $1,500 over the next decade. Then you can save some money and get it down with a T8 if you haven't already. You can get it down with a T5. You can use some imports that might be at the 60 watt level, or you can go for some really higher performance and save even more money. When it comes to further best practices, the priority one is typically the areas where new lights are needed, right? If there's a sunk cost for a renovation or new construction, to pay an electrician to climb on a ladder, you don't have to factor that penalty into the return on their investment. Someone will buy a light. Now it's a question of which one to buy. And for the first time, this really last, I want to say, 6 to 9 months, we've seen so many requests from electrical contractors that have LEDs in the spec for the bid plan. It's great. So now they're choosing which LED, and it's about the cost and the performance, and really what is warranty and the beam angle and the functionality that we just talked about. When it comes to priority 2, it's the high ROI, like these long run times. My reference to the New York account with the exit stairs, the lobbies, the hallways, the inefficient existing socket bulbs. I'm amazed to this day, and my wife smiles when we go out to a restaurant. You know, I'm looking at the incandescent bulb. So not only didn't they make an LED choice, they didn't even bother with the CFL, right? The pigtail, to me, is like the 8-track tape player of music. You know, there was something kind of elegant with incandescent. It was the invention, like vinyl records. The 8-track, as many of you may remember, was an attempt to get to functionality. Like, I think you could skip ahead on the track, and it was kind of, you know, a bridge to what ended up being the cassette, and then, you know, obviously the MP3. So now it's all just even in the cloud. What I like is the leapfrogging in those areas to find, you know, don't even think about the CFL anymore. The cost of the LEDs for the socket bulbs is so low. We sometimes just send people to the big box stores because they have the on-shelf rebates in many cases. Right? That's not our business, it's hooking people up for their houses. But if it's a hotel and a commercial opportunity, we want to make sure that they're getting the warranty that doesn't have the asterisks for the 3 hours a day, which is the burden at some of the big box levels. Okay, priority 3 is the all other areas. I referenced this term rolling retrofit a few years ago because we saw customers that said, well, I don't want to change the lights, I just put in the new T8, you know, over the T12s. And we said, okay, fine. Why don't we stock you with a couple dozen of the LEDs for every set of 10 classrooms, and as the lights burn out, you got to pay to have one of your facility guys go out there anyway. Just start to change them. So this is a burden on rebate administration because it's not all bundled. But from a functionality standpoint of operating a school or a hospital system or a corporate campus, sometimes that's an interesting path where you take the I'm going to change it attitude when it burns out. Not ideal for us, but not the end of the world, because at least they're starting to see the benefits. And honestly, after the first few months, they're like, you know, why don't you send over another couple pallets rather than just a case, because they see that the color exactly matches and it makes sense. Okay, with this final best practice slide, comparing the categories. So instead of just thinking about a fixture versus a retrofit, well, there's recess and pole lights and troffers, so many things where for a parking pole, if the can is in good shape, or the head, the shoebox, we can purge the guts versus change the whole head. So when we hear someone ask for a specific thing, we typically zoom out and say, what is your goal? Is it more light? Is it just energy savings? Is it aesthetic? And so we often can steer them towards a path that is more cost effective from that total cost of ownership, because they may be asking for something they don't either really need, or there's a cheaper path from a technology standpoint. We love the third-party testing. We swear by it. Don't trust me, trust the people that have nothing to gain by recommending an independent LED product. We live by that. The rebate eligibility, same way, we have to meet the standards of everyone else, and then the case studies prove what we said was going to happen has happened, and the warranties, we've stood by them. There are so few failures, it's less than 1 in 10,000. So it was giving us the ability, because of the way we manage the heat, the external drivers, and the really high performance aircraft grade aluminum, to be able to put our money where our mouth is. Okay, taking action. I like the idea of sharing that it's complicated, because a tax professional that prepares forms will find things that you and I will not find, because the tax code is complicated. With de-angle, with the nuances of rebates, with all this sort of subtlety, we have to be careful not to overwhelm clients, but also we have to be clear that this is not necessarily a DIY on the internet. Google up some LED high bay, because no one matches the output in lumens or the foot candles I was talking about with the optics. There is no yet commodity based, other than maybe the standard, the A19 base for your home. When it comes to those rebates, it's also complicated because there are prescriptive versus custom. So for one big industrial facility that was probably about a $300,000 project, to save them in that $100,000 to $150,000 per year, we would have gotten a $50,000 rebate for our client, 15% say, if we filled out just the prescriptive rebate based on checking the boxes. Because we had optics and sensors and really advanced systems to reduce the cost of energy further and the consumption, we got $120,000. So over a third of the cost was covered because we took the time. And it was crazy complicated. And it involved multiple visits and bringing people out and getting third-party evaluations of the actual consumption based on stopwatch timing and use in aisles with the motion sensors. But that's a difference of $70,000, big number, as a percentage. Request for multiple phase proposals. Well, we tell our customers, and I would tell the same to any of you that are in this energy sector, it's not a one-trick pony that's binary. It's not put in LEDs or don't. It's what to do now, what to do next season, when and how to apply for certain things, and start to just get in a rhythm like you would on a fitness plan of getting into energy fitness. Start smartening up. You are not going to go on a fast and start lifting, dumbbells, every hour of every day. You are going to start to eat a little better, watch your exercise, and start to move towards fitness. And we try and have those conversations. Rebate performance I talked about, and how important it is with the offset and really being intelligent, because sometimes changing a linear module like a fluorescent tube has less of an advantage, like a $5 rebate versus a $50 rebate by changing the whole fixture. Well, we did that in one of the Burger King cases where there was nothing wrong with the housing. So it killed me to take, in effect, a working housing for a fixture, which mathematically would have made sense to keep from a labor standpoint and put in the new LED modules over fluorescent tubes, but because there was a $50 rebate for the new fixture, that brought the fixture cost down to under the cost of the 4 fluorescent module replacements, and now somewhere in a landfill in New Jersey, there is a metal housing for many troffers. Right, so this is that rhythm, that change of attitude from like a disposable culture that I thought we had sort of gotten our hands around, but money talks, and there's only so much we can do to make that case. We thought about ways to sort of repurpose the housings, and it's just too much of a burden. So I like the idea as an architect, going back to my days at Penn in '93, wrote this thesis on energy intelligence, and adaptive reuse was a focus. Using an old townhouse to put in an upgraded furnace and new replacement windows, to me, maybe insulation in the attic made more sense than tearing down the townhouse to build some new structures. But for what it's worth, we're on the right side of history. Sometimes those little nuances are speed bumps in the way that we just have to acknowledge and get through. Flex payments and financing, you have to ask, meaning the customers need to know that they're available and that there is some flexibility. It's not, again, binary, buy it or don't buy it. Okay, energy professional, any of you can start to work with these property owners and managers to lead by example. I think the game becomes clear when you have a tool like lighting to add to potentially the quiver and advance the story, because the ROI is sometimes higher than many of the other initiatives. And then picking the right partner, I'm going to go very quickly through this. We're a professional lighting solutions partner with American-made LED manufacturing experience and insight. That happens to be really great at the government level. It's not always so important that we have the American manufacturing experience, but it is making things, which gives us the ability to judge intelligently the thermal management of the other products that we include in solutions. We've won the Best Lighting Retrofit by the Green Building Council. That was really cool. We've got proven results all throughout the country with buildings that range from, again, high rises to restaurants, sports venues, and warehouses. And when it comes to some of the clients, we've seen a really open response from now this emerging new generation of corporate players that have energy and sustainability managers. They have goals in reduction of operating expenses, which we can really help support. And these are sometimes Fortune 100 companies that are starting to get it at a fundamental ROI level. When it comes to the government, I referenced the 30 Navy ships. Our lights are also at Marine Corps Base Quantico. We did the first VA hospital, all kinds of other work inside of the public sector. And then when it comes to a subset like automotive, car dealerships, service centers, all the Monroe mufflers in Connecticut, it's exciting to see the level of adoption increase, because the phone is actually starting to ring in for the first time. For many years, we had to call and ask for meetings to convince people to change their lights. Now they're at least in the market to look for new lights. And then with fast food, a lot of these operations are running 24/7 like the Burger Kings, so the advantage for them mathematically is crystal clear, very strong ROI. Case studies, too small to read here, but we put dozens and dozens of projects into these single-page reports. We're happy to share them and follow up, because sometimes, again, matching what you say you're going to do with the actual story is as important as the story of the technology and why it may be different, better, and or more cost-effective than something else. Gretz Beer I referenced with the big warehouse. Jefferson University Hospital, one of the first hospitals in the United States to retrofit parking garage. Started with the 24/7, and that was the key there. Okay, proven track record, industry first, made in America, right tech, right quality, management, auditing, rebates, it just goes on and on. I thought having the right tech was enough. It takes like these 10 things, because honestly, you can't be first in a marketplace that is seeing Department of Energy reports tell you that the LEDs aren't going to last as long as the manufacturer said, right? So we had insurmountable challenges, including the big super corps, the GE, Philips, Sylvanias of the world, early, with especially fluorescent, writing all kinds of white papers that said that the lumens didn't match, and we had to explain it's directional lumens, and a third of them are wasted going up in a trough or fixture. And so this battle felt a little bit at some of the times like a David and Goliath challenge. Okay, I'll open it up to some questions. Thank you.
If somebody wanted to work with you on projects, can we come direct?
The short answer is you don't have to go through anyone to work with us, but we will ask you a dozen questions to try and vet out early, how should we expect to work together?